Good morning to all of you. A charge exerts a force on another charge even in vacuum. How is this possible? Well, we say that every charge is associated with its own electrostatic field in the space surrounding it. The forces arise because the fields interact. So electric forces are nothing but an outcome of the interaction of the fields of two or more charges. Now, how do we know that there is an electric field or an electrostatic field in a particular region? Well, if you if you take a test charge and place it at a particular point, if it experiences a force, then we can conclude that there is an electric field at that point. If there is no force, we can conclude that there is no electric field at that point. So, if this is the region and we have got a point P at which we wish to ascertain whether there is an electric field, we place a test charge Q naught there. Let us say it experiences a force, electric force Fe. Then there would be a electric field at that point. Now, we define a new physical quantity known as the electric field intensity. The electric field intensity. The electric field intensity E is a vector and it is defined as the force electric field intensity at a point. Remember, it is defined from point to point, it varies. The electric field intensity at a point is defined as the force experienced by a unit test charge placed at that point. So, force experienced by unit test charge, we are placing a small test charge Q naught. So, unit test charge per coulomb we need, so by Q naught. So, this will be Newton per coulomb. That is the electric field intensity at any given point. Now, to visualize the electric field, we draw field lines or lines of force. We draw it in such a way that where the field is strong, the lines are crowded, and where the field is weak, the lines are far apart. Then another thing, if this is a line of force, if you place a test charge here Q naught on the line of force, then it would experience a force tangential to the line of force at that point. So it would experience a force tangential like this. The force would be tangential. Now the question arises, if you have a tangent, the direction of the force could be this way or that way. So let us say the force is towards the right. The electric force, electric field or force is towards the right. Now what we do is we indicate on the line of force in what direction to mark the force. So we will put an arrow like this on that. If we had put an arrow like this at this point, we would show the force pointing towards the left. Here is towards the right. So on every line of force, there would be an arrow which indicates that at every point where a tangent is drawn, in what direction the tangent should be pointing to. Now, let us say mathematically how we can draw the lines of force. Supposing I have a line of force and I choose an xy coordinate system. So obviously this is xy coordinate system and this is a line of force here. The line of force. So obviously there would be an equation relating y and x to define this curve. This is the line of force. So we could say this is some y is equal to f of x is a function of x. Could be anything, any curve, just general curve. Now if at this point this is the electric field E, yes, it is tangential. So if I take the angle as theta, tan theta is the slope of the line of force at that point. Tan theta is nothing but dy by dx. Now E we could resolve it as Ex and Ey. So therefore dy by dx can be written as Ey by Ex. Yes, tan theta is equal to dy by dx. So E theta would be tan theta is dy by dx. So that is Ey by Ex. So if you knew the y component as a function of x and y and x component as a function of x and y, we could integrate this and find the relation between y and x, and hence we will know the equation of the curve. In fact, we can determine how the line of force will be if we knew the electric field, how the electric field is defined at every point. We can actually find out what is y as a function of x. Let us attempt this for a point charge. Supposing there is a point charge at the origin. At the origin there is a point charge q and there is a point p which has a coordinate x comma y. Let the position vector be r. Okay. So the field, this is a plus q charge, let's say. So if you place the test charge here, it will experience a force Fe along the line joining the two. There would be a force on plus q also. We have fixed it by applying an external force. So there would be a force along the line joining the 2 point charges by Coulomb's law, and that Fe would be 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q naught by r squared into r cap, where r cap is the unit vector in the direction of r. So that is the force. The electric field would be Fe by q naught, that would be equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q by r squared into r cap. Yes. So I can now write this as 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into q by r squared. Now, okay, let me write this r squared, and this r would be vector r divided by the magnitude. Any unit vector is a vector divided by its magnitude. So this would be 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q by r squared. R is vector r is nothing but xi plus yj, and I will have r cube in the denominator. I will have r cube in the denominator. Yes? And what is the magnitude of r? The magnitude of r is, if r is xi plus yj, magnitude of r would be square root of x squared plus y squared. Magnitude of r is square root of x squared plus r. This is vector r, so magnitude of r would be x squared. So this would be q into xi plus yj by 4 pi epsilon naught x squared plus y squared raised to 3 by 2. Yes. So I can get in this, for this equation I can get what is Ey. So I can say dy by dx is equal to Ey. What is Ey? It is the y component. The y component is q by 4 pi epsilon naught. Q by 4 pi epsilon naught. Y divided by x squared plus y squared raised to 3 by 2 by Ex. Ex should be q by 4 pi epsilon naught x by x squared plus y squared raised to 3 by 2. So you see many things cancel here, and in fact q by 4 pi epsilon naught 0 cancels, x squared plus y squared raised to 3 by 2 cancels, and I will get y by x. So basically I get dy by dx is equal to y by x. So dy by dx is equal to y by x. So I can now write this as dy by y is equal to dx by x and integrate. It's an indefinite integral. There are no limits we are putting. So this will be ln y is equal to ln x plus some c dash. Is an integration constant. Remember, when you do indefinite integrals, you have to add a constant of integration. So if I bring this side, I will add ln y minus ln x equal to c dash. This is nothing but ln of y by x. This constant I could put it as ln c. C dash I could put as ln c. So that ln goes off and I get y by x equal to c, or y is equal to cx, where c is some real number. It can be positive, c can be positive or negative. Now, therefore the lines of force are a straight line. For a point chart, the lines of force are a straight line. So let's try drawing that. So if you have that point charge Q here, if I draw the two axes like that, y is equal to cx. When c is positive, you would have the lines like this. This is c is positive. When c is positive, this is the first quadrant. The first quadrant, x and y are positive. In the third quadrant, x and y both would be negative. So it would be the continuation of these lines. It would be a continuation of these lines like that. So c will be positive here also. And when c is negative and x is negative here in the second quadrant, y will be positive. So you will have the lines like this. C is negative here, we could continue these lines here like that. So when c is negative and x is positive, y will be negative. So y is negative. This is negative y. This is positive y, negative x, and positive x. Now we need to draw the direction of the, we have to indicate the arrow. We know the x is positive and y is positive, so the vector is this way. So these arrows will be like this. Come to the third quadrant, x is negative, so ex is negative, ey is also negative, so the lines of force would be like this. Here by the same logic, lines of force would be like this, lines of force would be like this. So we find here, we may, if we ignore the arrows, we can say the lines of force are continuous. But if you consider the arrows into, that is the direction into consideration, then the lines of force are not continuous at the location of the charge, because there is a change in direction. If this is the charge q and if I draw a line of force like this, the direction here is like this and direction here is that way. That is, they are radially outward. So at the location of a charge, the lines of force are not continuous. Whereas in all other places where there are no charges, the lines of force are continuous. If you had used if you had taken a negative charge, well, the force, the electric field would have been 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q by r squared, that is the magnitude, and the direction would be minus r cap. So everywhere you will get the same equation y equals a, but you are going to get y is equal, instead of y equal to cx, you will get the answer, equation of y equal to minus cx. So the the lines of force will form a same pattern, but the direction is going to be inward now, radially inward. Okay, it's going to be radially inward and it will be discontinuous at the location of the negative charge. If you had, for instance, two charges, one positive and negative, if it is positive and negative, when the line of force would start from the positive charge and terminate on the negative charge. That is how the lines of force would be. We can find the equation of each of these lines of force. Well, we need a high-speed computer to do it. Yes, the equations are a bit complicated. That's why we took a simple case of a point charge just to show you the method. It can be done for in any situation. Now, if you see the lines of force that we have shown here, in 360 degrees, if you draw in 360 degrees, if you draw a line of force at every 30 degrees, you would have 12 lines. But if you drew it at every 10 degrees, there would be 36 lines. So, there is an inherent scale which is there in drawing the lines of force. So, what could be the scale? You could say, for instance, say where the field is 1 Newton per Coulomb, well, I shall draw 5 lines per centimeter square. I will draw 5 lines per centimeter square. Area held normal to the perpendicular to the direction of the lines of force, perpendicular to the direction of the field intensity. So, if the field is say 4 Newton per Coulomb and the area held perpendicular to it is say 2 centimeters squared, well, you would draw 5 into 4 into 2, you would draw 40 lines in an area of 2 centimeters squared. So the lines of force are drawn with respect to a certain chosen scale. But as you see, drawing the lines of force in 3 dimension is very cumbersome. Of course, a high-speed computer can easily do that, but to tide over the actual drawing of the lines of force, physicists came out with another physical quantity known as the electric flux. This, knowing the electric flux, is equivalent to knowing the lines of force passing through a certain area. So let us see how the idea of electric flux is developed. Now the lines of force are drawn in such a way that they are proportional to the field intensity. That is, if the field is stronger, at that place there are more lines of force. The lines of forces are crowded. So, I can say the lines of force are proportional to E at a certain area dA, at a certain area dA held perpendicular to E. So lines of force proportional to the field intensity, electric field intensity at a certain area dA held perpendicular to E. It is perpendicular to dA for a certain E, for a given E, for a certain E, for a given E, it is proportional to dA. Now, you must realize that the lines of force also depend on how you orient the area. If these are the lines of force and my palm is the area, if I hold it perpendicular to the lines of force, maximum lines of force pass through it. But if I turned it, less number of lines of force would pass, and if I did it this way, no lines of force would pass through it. So there is a trigonometric function involved. In fact, it's cos theta, because cos 90 is 0 and cos 0 is 1. In fact, we are going to choose an area, and if this is the electric field, the area vector is chosen as dA. Area vector is normal to the surface of the area, and this is the angle theta. So when theta is 0, the flux is maximum. When theta is 90, the flux is 0. So we say this is proportional to cos theta. So I can say the lines of force are proportional to E dA cos theta. Vectorially, this can be written as E dot dA. And E dot dA is called as d phi, the electric flux. Yes, d phi is called as the electric flux. Its unit is Newton per Coulomb meter squared. E is in Newton per Coulomb, dA is meter squared. So Newton per Coulomb meter squared. So the lines of force are a pure number, but the electric flux is not a dimensionless number, it has got units. But nonetheless, since the lines of force are proportional to the electric flux becomes a good measure, a proper measure rather, of the lines of force. So you need not actually draw the lines of force at all. You just consider the flux through an area and compare the fluxes to in any situation. So let us now take a problem where you have a charge q here, a point charge q here, and here there is a disk. There is a disk here, and it is held perpendicular to the x-axis. The disk is perpendicular to the x-axis. Its center lies on the x-axis, and this q subtends an angle theta naught at this disk. This disk is an imaginary surface. I mean, this is an imaginary, there is no disk which you are placing there. It is an imaginary area. We wish to find out what is the flux of Q, that is the number of lines of force of Q that pass through this area. Let us see how we can do this. Well, if you take the formula for the flux, d phi is equal to E dot dA. The infinitesimal flux through an infinitesimal area dA the infinitesimal flux d phi to an infinitesimal area dA is E dA. So the total flux is integral E dot dA. Now in this situation, you can see that if I take this disk here and some area dA here, and this is the charge q. So at this point, if I want the field, I join these two, and E would be in this direction. Yes, if I place a test charge at that point, along the line joining the two charges would be E. So this would be theta, the angle between E and dA. So I'll have to integrate the E dot dA over the entire area to find the flux. But now I find there is some complication. What is the complication? dA no doubt has got a certain value, infinitesimal value, and it is along the positive x-axis. But E, the direction of E would be different at different points. If I took E here, E would be like that. The angle would be something else. Yes, the angle would be something else. So the angle is going to change, and the magnitude of E is also going to change from point to point. So therefore, I need to watch closely and see how we can, we need to watch closely and see how we could reduce the mathematical complications. Well, if you see if I draw the disk here, yes, like that, and if I took a point here and here, both at a distance r, then if I drew the E here and the E here, the magnitude of E would be the same. Everywhere on the circle of radius r, the magnitude of E would be the same. So we say there is what is known as circular symmetry. If you take a circle of radius r, everywhere E and the angle theta with the x-axis is going to be the same. So that would simplify matters. So therefore we will divide this disk, imaginary disk, into rings of thickness. If this is the disk, we will divide it into rings of thickness dr. So the area vector dA would be the area of this ring. The area of the ring can be taken as 2 pi r circumference into the thickness dr. The ring could be treated as a ribbon. You take it out and cut it, extend it. It is like a thin rope, thin string. Yes, and 2 pi r into dr would give you the area of the ring. E, what is E? E at that point, let us say this distance is x1, it is a constant, and this is, say, if this is theta, this is also theta. E would be q 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q by this distance squared. This distance is nothing but square root of x squared plus r squared, where r is the radius of the ring. So E would be at that point q by 4 pi epsilon naught into 1 by this distance squared. So it would be x1 squared plus r squared. So what would be the flux d phi? The flux d phi would be E dot dA. E we know is q by 4 pi epsilon naught into 1 by x1 squared plus r squared. Area is 2 pi r dr into the angle between the two cos theta. That is the infinitesimal flux through the area of the ring. This dA is the area of the ring. Now we need to integrate this. Now we must note here there are two variables r and theta. x1 is a constant. Okay, so we must reduce this to a single variable. So what we can basically do is we know tan theta is equal to r by x1. In this right angle triangle, tan theta is r, the radius of the ring, divided by x1. x1 is a constant. So we can write r as x1 tan theta and just eliminate r. Now there is also a dr. So to get dr, let us differentiate this with respect to theta. So derivative of tan theta would be secant squared theta, and with respect to theta we are doing, this would be dr by d theta into 1 by x1. So I can say from this that dr is equals secant squared theta x1 into d theta. Let me write it well. Next line. So dr would be x1 secant squared theta d theta. So let's make those substitutions here. So d phi would be q by 4 pi epsilon naught x1 squared. Instead of r squared, I am going to put x1 squared tan squared theta into 2 pi r. Instead of r, I am going to put x1 tan theta. Instead of dr, I am going to put x1 secant squared theta d theta, and there is also a cos theta into cos theta. So many things are going to cancel here. See this. First of all, this here, if you take this x1 squared would be common, and you will have 1 plus tan squared theta, which is secant squared theta. So let me do the cancellations. 2 pi will cancel. 2 will cancel with this as 2. Well, secant squared will cancel. x1 and x1, this will cancel, and I am left with q by 2 epsilon naught. I have tan theta cos theta d theta. Tan theta is sin theta by cos theta. So I have q by 2 epsilon naught sin theta d theta. Sin theta d theta. So we need to integrate this. Theta varying from 0 to theta naught. So if we integrated that, phi which is equal to integral d phi is equal to integral q by 2 pi epsilon naught sin theta d theta, theta varying from 0 to theta naught. So this will be q by 2 epsilon naught into minus cos theta. Integral of sin theta is minus cos theta, 0 to theta naught. So this will give us minus q by 2 epsilon naught cos theta naught minus cos 0. Cos 0 is 1. So you will have this as q by 2 pi epsilon naught 1 minus cos theta naught. That is the flux through that surface. Yes, that is the final answer. Now we see a very interesting thing. Supposing we make that disk infinitely large, see what happens. If you make infinitely large, theta naught will tend to 90. See this? We have the charge here and we have the disk here. The lines of force were like this, passing. Now when you make the disk bigger and bigger by making theta naught tend to 90, all these lines, even a line of force like this, except the line is exactly 90, except that all lines of force would pass through the disk because the disk is infinitely long. So if you put theta naught as 90, the flux would be cos 90 is 0, would be q by 2 epsilon naught. Okay. Now this q by epsilon naught is on one side, on the right hand side. By symmetry, there would be a q by epsilon naught, q by 2 epsilon. Q by 2 epsilon naught is on the right hand side. By symmetry, q by 2 epsilon naught will also be on the left hand side. So the total flux phi would be q by 2 epsilon naught into 2 or q by epsilon. That is, the total flux from a point charge q would be q by epsilon naught. Thank you.